This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I am your host, Tim Flattery, and one of the ways that we wanted to kick off Season 8 of the podcast, as you remember, it was supposed to be opening day this week. Baseball was supposed to be back. And so to partner with that and to coincide with that timeline, we wanted to find a bunch of guys from the state of Iowa that have had a cup of coffee in the major leagues. And we wanted to call this week Cup of Coffee Week. And so we're going to stick to that timeline, even though the coronavirus is changing opening day. The opening day of baseball's timeline, we wanted to stick to our timeline. And so this week's Moonlighter is a guy from Urbandale, Iowa, that actually had a cup of coffee, pitched 11 games for the New York Yankees in the year 2000. And if you remember those Yankee teams from the late 90s and the early 2000s, they were a dynasty. And they were a dynasty that was full of stars. I mean, not only did you have guys like Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte, but you also had, if you remember, like Dwight Gooden, David Cohn, David Wells, Roger Clemens, Darrell Strawberry, Tim Raines. I mean, they were just loaded with well-known name brand players at that time. Bernie Williams. I mean, the list goes on and on with legendary players that the Yankees had, and they have the World Series rings to prove it. And Darrell Einertson from Urbandale, Iowa, was on the Yankees in the year 2000. He actually pitched 11 games, had a 3.55 ERA for the Yankees out of the bullpen that year, and he was part of that World Series team. If you remember the year 2000, that was the Subway Series. That was the year the Yankees played the Mets. The two New York teams played each other in the World Series in that 2000 World Series, and Darrell Einertson was on that team. And Darrell Einertson, it was fun. We got him actually in studio for this episode. He came in. He has so many great stories from those Yankee teams. I mean, it's one thing to have a cup of coffee in the major leagues. It's another thing to be a Yankee. Right? To play for the Yankees under George Steinbrenner, to pitch with Derek Jeter and Robinson Cano behind you. I mean, those are just legendary, historic teams. And to wear the Yankee pinstripes. I mean, could you imagine being a baseball player and having a chance to wear the pinstripes that Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, I mean, Jeter, the list goes on. And to be a part of that fraternity would be something special. And so it's so great to talk to Darrell, to get him in studio, to talk about his days in professional baseball, especially that 2000 season with the New York Yankees. And I think you guys, baseball fans, are really going to love this conversation with Darrell Einertson. And as always, folks, make sure to subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show and leave us a 5-star review. Of course, you can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. Stay safe out there, stay healthy, and thanks for listening. Enjoy today's episode with Darrell Einertson. This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com. So we're back in the Moonlight Graham Show studio. I have former New York Yankee Darrell Einertson. Is it Einertson or Einertson?
It's pronounced Einertson.
Einertson with a hearty. Got Darrell Einertson here in studio. Darrell, thanks for coming on and joining the Moonlight Graham Show.
Hey, no problem. This is awesome.
So it's fun to have you in studio here. You know, I'm looking up your profile. You were born in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Here I thought you were an Iowa guy, and you were born in Wisconsin. When did you move to Iowa?
Well, my parents were up there visiting relatives, and so my mom was pregnant, and so I just happened to come out.
Unexpected, a little early.
Yes, a little early. So I'm an Iowa native. You know, I've raised here, went to high school here. Everything I've done in Iowa has been here. I was just up there visiting family.
So were you born and raised mostly in Urbandale then?
No, pretty much on the south side and east side of Des Moines.
Gotcha.
I just transferred over to Urbandale my junior year, second semester.
Nice. Did they recruit you over?
I don't know if Denny Barton recruited me over, but I heard he was a good coach. My brother was going to school there, so he talked me into it. So I left all my friends on the south side. They didn't like me very much.
Yeah.
When I did that. So
at that time, Urbandale was kind of a suburb school.
Yeah. There was a great coach. I have nothing, Denny Barton's awesome. He's done a lot for me and my career. I couldn't say enough for the Urbandale program.
Well, it's funny. You and I have both coached at Dowling Catholic here in West Des Moines, and Dowling gets a lot of flack for recruiting, especially with all the success they've had on the football program. And I always give it right back to folks, like with Denny Barton recruiting, and it's just kind of a joke, right? Around the area, everybody knows the good athletes at a pretty young area across the Des Moines area, no matter what school they go to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're here in studio, in the Moonlight Graham studio. I got a picture of my buddy Jordan Kreinbrink up there from Decorah on the wall, and you say, Decorah. And you had mentioned that you guys, when you were at Urbandale, played Decorah in the state championship game. And we had already mentioned Denny Barton, one of the most legendary high school baseball coaches in Iowa history. But Decorah had a longtime baseball coach who I think just retired maybe last year. What was his name? Ola Senich or
I can't remember.
He's got a crazy Polish name. Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. But anyway, that must have been a great game of two legendary programs there.
Oh yes, Decorah back in 1990, they were still a 4A program. I think they're a 3A program now, but they had a good team at the time. Was giving me problems, so I wasn't able to pitch that championship game. We had Sean Runyon, big left-hander. From Urbandale, who signed with the Detroit Tigers organization, got us into that game by beating number 1 Fort Dodge.
Ooh, the Dodgers.
Yes.
So would that have been like Bo Chebin? Was
Yes.
Bo Chebin playing for the Dodgers at that
Bo
time?
Chebin was playing for the Dodgers at that time.
And they were probably being coached by Ed McNeil still. I mean, so you had some legendary coaches in the state tournament right then.
Yeah, that was a great battle. I don't think we beat them by much, but it only takes one run to get the W.
What year would that have been then?
1990.
That was 90.
I was a junior.
So what's interesting about that is, when you look at most guys that have played in the major leagues, they're going to, they're going to a 4-year school, they're going to a power D1, or they're getting drafted out of high school. You had a little bit different story. So you go out of Urbandale, and then you go to Indian Hills Community College out of Urbandale. Mm-hmm. What was that recruiting process like? Were a lot of schools after you at that time?
Actually, no, I wasn't going to play college baseball at all.
Was it because of the arm injury, or nobody was looking at you?
Nope, nobody was really recruiting me at the time. Then we had a coach down in Indian Hills. His name was Rick Matthews.
Famous coach.
So Rick Matthews happened to give Denny Barton a call when he was coming through town, and we were playing a team from Davenport or some AAU thing or something like that, and I was throwing that day. And so Denny told Rick, he said, come on down. I got a guy that, he's uncommitted. He'd probably sign with you. And sure enough, Rick saw me throw. I was touching 88 to 90 that day, had a letter of intent in his car, so I signed it on the hood of his BMW. Yeah, that's a true story.
What's the head of Indian Hills Community College Baseball doing driving a BMW?
Oh, shoot, I don't know. He was working for the Colorado Rockies organization.
Oh, was he?
Too, so I think he was doing all right.
So you go down to Indian Hills, and at that point, were you going in strictly as a pitcher? Were you a position player? What was your plan heading into college?
Well, Rick wanted to just use me as a PO the first year. In high school, I was 2-time All-State first baseman. I could swing it a little bit.
Righty or lefty?
I was a right-handed hitter.
Right-handed hitter.
Yeah, playing first base. And so he didn't let me play the freshman year. Actually, all I did was pitch. And then Rick left, and then Cam Walker took over the program, and I'm in Cam's ear in the fall. Hey, man, let me swing the bat. Let me swing the bat. And he got tired of hearing me. He goes, hop in with the catchers. Sure enough, I was their DH all year long.
Really?
Yes.
So you pitched and hit then for Indian Hills that sophomore year?
Sophomore year, yep.
When was the moment that you thought maybe baseball's in my future here?
After I left Indian Hills, because that program really molded you, gave you a work ethic. They in the gym, running, conditioning, everything that I didn't like, but I learned to love. And then after my sophomore year down in Indian Hills, there was a guy named Ron Eiler, I think from Cameron University, was up in Boone. I was pitching the Iowa championship game against, I think it was Swick.
Southwest Community College,
yes.
yeah.
Yep. And he goes, "Do you want to come to play ball for me down in Lawton, Oklahoma?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I took advantage of that and went down to Lawton, down to Cameron University, and played for him for about a year and a half.
Cool. So what was JUCO baseball like back in the early 90s? I was an Iowa Central guy. I played 2 years of junior college ball. I loved it, right? But college baseball has really changed. And what you've seen in like programs like the University of Iowa or these big D1s, they have all of kind of the swag and all of the facilities nowadays that your football and basketball programs do. JUCOs are still kind of getting to that point, but I got to imagine back in the early 90s, you guys are really bootstrapping it.
Yeah, back then, Indian Hills had a run from 91 to about 96, 97. Went to the Junior College World Series the 2 years I was there, and then Cam took multiple teams, back to Grand Junction, Colorado. So, back then, Dwayne Banks wasn't really recruiting a whole lot of guys. The head coach over there at Iowa wasn't really recruiting a whole lot of guys from the JUCO level. So. And now, who is it? My buddy Mark Reardon down at Iowa Western.
Right.
He's
doing awesome though.
He is on a tear down there. He's doing great things, going back, winning national titles. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The JUCO ball in the state of Iowa, a lot of it has to do with, there's no Iowa State program anymore. There's no UNI program anymore. And so you got like Iowa Western, Indian Hills, DMAC, Iowa Central, Southeastern. There's some really good baseball being played at the JUCO level. Back in the early 90s, it was almost Indian Hills was kind of the cream of the crop here in the state.
Yeah. I was very fortunate to sign with Rick Matthews and that program.
Who else was looking at you outside of Indian Hills? You mentioned Cameron University, going down to Lawton, Oklahoma is where you ended up going. But were there other offers coming out of Indian Hills?
No, not really.
Geez, you were just passed up
not really,
right and left.
Yeah. So, if it wasn't for coaches taking a chance on me, I probably wouldn't have got to the big leagues. And even when I left Cameron University, Jerry Ford, who is the
Perfect Game guy, right?
Yes, he's the guy that created Perfect Game. He gave me a call and he goes, "Hey, why don't you come down and throw for me?" So I went to Iowa Wesleyan. There was one class that I flunked, that I failed down at Cameron. So I actually was ineligible. My senior year, got a call from Jerry. He did some things. He got me a class that that transferred over to the first semester, and then the rest is history.
Well, you must have tore it up at Iowa Wesleyan.
Yeah, we had a good team.
So were there other like big time guys, pro guys on that Iowa Wesleyan team?
Well, we had Rich Greif. I don't
know that name.
Rich Greif was on that team. He eventually was the head coach at Marshalltown Community College.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was on that team. We had a bunch of guys from Indian Hills, that came on over and played at that program. So we had a good year. Because
you all of a sudden, without ever, touching a Division I baseball field, right? You go from Indian Hills to Cameron University to Iowa Wesleyan, and then you're an 11th round draft pick of the New York Yankees. Mm-hmm. So you must have really shown some scouts some things on the right day for them to think that highly of you. Yeah, you're right. It was the right day. We made the regional tournament. I think it was down in Kansas somewhere. And we were losing Jerry Ford, and the scouts were actually leaving. And then they goes, "Hold up. My best guy, you haven't seen my best guy throw yet." And so I was out there throwing 95, 96 miles an hour. Holy smokes. And we ended up driving back to Mount Pleasant. And by the time we got to the dorms, there was about 8 or 9 different scouts' numbers on the wall wanting me to throw for them the next day. And I just threw 3 innings. I don't know how many pitches I threw. I said, "Give me 2 or 3 days and I'll come and throw for you again."
And it was like literally 3 or 4 days before the draft.
Wow.
And the Yankees were there with his Nationals cross-checker. Tim Kelly was the scout that signed me.
Tim Kelly.
So, yeah, after that, I would have hopped on a plane with, for a plane ticket and a can of Copenhagen. I just wanted an opportunity.
You sound like a baseball guy right there.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So you're throwing 95, 96 miles an hour back in the early 90s. This is nowadays everybody's kind of velocity obsessed, right? And so you run these programs, these throwing programs with high school kids, and you're throwing year round in the long toss programs. And we have it down to a science for how to develop velocity today, right? And so you're seeing kids throw harder at a younger age than ever before now. But I got to imagine 30 years ago that wasn't the case. So when did you know, man, like I'm really starting to pop the radar gun here?
Well, I needed something to get me over the hump, so I was always trying to tinker with different things to try and gain velocity, because back then we didn't have drive line and all the other stuff. You obviously you played long toss, till you're blue in the face.
Right. But, running and long toss for kind of the pitcher's, medicine.
That was it. So I cut open a tennis ball and I threw a ton of pennies in there. I don't know how much this tennis ball weighed, and I just duct taped the heck out of it. So I would actually start throwing that at about 60 to 70 feet before I picked up a baseball. And then I started seeing improvements. And
really?
The velocity started jumping.
Are you kidding me? That's the trick?
That's what I used back then.
And I know with driveline now, of course, you see a lot of weighted ball stuff, and a lot of it's like deceleration things where you're throwing it backwards essentially to build up the muscles in your back. But you were just throwing them forward. You're throwing up against a wall.
I was playing catch with another guy, like my catcher.
Really?
Yep. We had an indoor little facility. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And I just took that throwing program in the winter, and I did the same stuff in the spring. And next thing you know, I was averaging probably about 93. I was topping 95, 96, but I wasn't pitching at 95,
right.
96, But my comfort zone was anywhere from 90 to about 93 miles an hour, and I threw nothing but sinkers.
So two seams?
Two seam fastballs, yep.
Was it sinker slider, or what else did you have?
That's exactly what I was. I was a two-pitch guy. I didn't develop the changeup till I was 25 years old.
Yeah, I don't think I've developed one yet. That's my problem. What's funny is, though, it looked like, if you track your career, you looked like mostly a bullpen guy in your time in professional baseball. And a lot of times, if you're a two-pitch guy, you kind of get relegated to the bullpen, but it also can be a good career if you can find a spot and stick with it. Did you become kind of that bullpen guy right away in pro ball, or did you find your way into that role?
No, I was always been a bullpen guy. I was a 7th, 8th guy. I could get, 6 outs when you wanted 6 outs. I didn't have quite closer stuff. Closers guys, they came in and they were just blowing. But I liked it. I loved it down there. I had the mentality for a bullpen guy. And so that's what the Yankees, liked me to do. So I just continued just throwing in the bullpen.
What was your favorite bullpen game? I've spent a lot of time in bullpens, and you got to find some way to pass the first 6 innings of a game with the guys down in the bullpen. Sometimes you're throwing quarters in cups, you're picking out girls in the stands, you're placing bets on different things. What were some of the games that you like to play down in the bullpen?
Well, we did all of that. We definitely did all of that. We'd flick seeds in a cup. We'd set a cup out by the foul line or something like that, or maybe 10 feet away, and to see who can make it, and just weird little games. We'd light each other's cleats on fire if we try to get their attention. Just pass the time. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about your career, Darrell, is you played for, 3 colleges that most people have never heard of, right? And then you get drafted by the most famous professional sports team in the world, the New York Yankees. What's it like to be a New York Yankee? What's that mean?
Well, once you're a Yankee, you're always a Yankee. And I was one of the fortunate ones. When I was little, that was my team.
Really?
I was born in 72. The Yankees were winning World Series.
78 and 70, 77, 78, yeah. I think they went back to back.
Yeah, so I was watching that growing up as a kid, and I was like, so you picked that was my team. And to get drafted, by the Yankees was a dream come true. I would have played for anybody, but that team called, and I signed on the dotted line.
when you go to spring training, even if it's just minor league spring training with the New York Yankees, do they kind of indoctrinate you into the culture and the history, or how do they make you a Yankee and earn your pinstripes? You know what, you hear that term a lot.
Well, first off, you got to get a haircut, and second off, you can't wear your pants down by your ankles. We had to wear them up on our knees. You had to show at least 6 inches of stirrup. Yeah, they basically, you can't walk out to the field, with a 5 o'clock shadow. Every day you had to shave. And so, like, when young players get taught that at a young age, it just, and to this day, I'm sitting in your chair right now.
Clean shaven?
I'm clean shaven. I got
looking good.
My hair's, short. I don't know. It carried with me after I left the Yankees.
Yeah, well, you were at the Yankees too at a fun time in baseball history, right? And right from that 96 through 2001 run, or really the Jeter era, kind of Jeter, Pettit, Rivera, all of those guys, that core four that you've heard about, you came to the Yankees right at that same time. So did you come up through the minor leagues with a lot of those, famous Yankee players?
I think some of the, like Alfonso Soriano.
Yeah.
Would be one. Nick Johnson,
first baseman.
Yes. Shane Spencer, who was the Yankees left fielder. That's a great buddy of mine to this day. Oh, I'm just trying to remember some of the other, minor league guys that I played with. Soriano's probably the most famous one because he had a great career with the Yankees, Cubs, Rangers.
Oh yeah, borderline Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah, you leave Soria at second base and not change him into a left fielder, he's probably getting in the Hall of Fame as a second baseman.
Right. Yeah, and eventually, the year 2000, you get the call up to the big leagues to play for the New York Yankees. How special was that experience? Well,
we were playing the Durham Bulls in North Carolina, and so we got 7 days worth of meal money because we were on a 7-day stretch. And then I got called into Trey Hillman.
Oh, yeah, Trey Hillman, he coached the Royals for a while.
Yeah, so Trey was our AAA manager at the time. Calls me into his office. He goes, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to need that meal money back." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you just got called up to the big leagues." And I said, "Do you still need that meal money back?" So yeah, me and the boys, we all went out, had a good night.
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
So where'd you have to go?
They flew me straight to New York City. I landed, got picked up by a chauffeur and somebody that took me to the Yankee Stadium. I had my suitcase with me. And that day, I got in the ball game. We were playing the Kansas City Royals at home on a Saturday day game with about 58,000 fans in the seats.
Do you remember who you faced?
Yeah, actually, I faced Carlos Beltran, Mike Sweeney.
Mike Sweeney, yeah.
Mike Sweeney. I think there was a young Raul Ibanez back in the day. They had some really good players.
He wasn't that. Raul Ibanez just played 24 years. He was probably, who knows how old he was at that time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they had some potential playoff teams there. Mike Sweeney was a all-star. Beltran, of course, would go on to be probably a Hall of Famer. Wow. So you're in Yankee Stadium for your debut, towing the rubber in front of 58,000 people. What was that feeling like? I mean, it had to be kind of surreal, right? For a guy from Urbandale, Iowa, that, maybe 5 years ago was pitching in Lawton, Oklahoma. Did that thought cross your mind as you're towing the rubber in old Yankee Stadium, the house that Babe Ruth built?
I didn't think I was actually going to get in the ball game because it was like a two-run lead. We're up. We ended up winning that game. And then, Joe calls down to the bullpen and gets me going. Joe Torre, yeah. And actually, I think I almost swallowed my Copenhagen. I don't know. I was so shocked to get that call on the first day, getting called up, and I went in there. Got 4 outs, got 4 ground balls, 3 to Jeter, and I think somebody else, and wow, they got me out of there. I think Roger Clemens might have started that game. I can't remember.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
because those teams were just absolutely loaded with names you'd remember.
Yeah.
I mean, you've said Derek Jeter and Roger Clemens, and you had so many veterans on those teams as well. What did you learn from those guys?
Man, to crack that, that starting pitching staff was David Wells, David Cohn.
Was Leiter on that team?
No, Leiter wasn't. He wasn't one of the starters. Who was it? Coney, Wells, Pettit, Dwight Gooden.
Oh my God.
And Roger Clemens. Those are the 5 starters. And then down in the bullpen, obviously you had Mike Stanton, Jeff Nelson, Ramiro Mendoza,
Mariano Rivera. Come on.
Oh shoot, I can't remember the.
Jeff Nelson, was Jeff Nelson on the big right-hander with a mustache?
Yep, Nelly. He'd sling it from the the right side.
Yeah, he was nasty.
Frisbee slider.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about, you play some games in bullpens. Was the Yankees bullpen different because you're a Yankee now, right? And so is there a different level of decorum when you're a Yankee in the bullpen?
They treated me just a little different because I was the rookie. They made me carry the seed bag. I got the bubble gum bag. I had to carry the balls, the bands, and all the other stuff. But I didn't really care because it was so cool to be down in that bullpen.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever meet Steinbrenner?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I met him in spring training, and I actually met him in New York. I was actually in the hot tub in spring training down at George Steinbrenner Field down in Tampa. And he just walks by and pats me on the back and says, "Nice job today."
Really?
Yeah. And I looked up at him, and I'm like, holy shit, that's George Steinbrenner.
Yeah. Thanks, boss. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, of course, the Yankees go on to win the World Series in 2000. That's a Subway Series. If anybody remembers, is the year before the 2001 series against the Diamondbacks, which that one has really stuck out in people's memories because of like 9/11 that year. But 2000 was the Subway Series. The Mets, Yankees, they win the World Series. You weren't on that playoff roster, though, were you?
No, I didn't make the playoff roster.
So how does that work, the playoff roster, where you're part of the team during the season, and potentially if somebody gets hurt, you might have to be part of that playoff roster? You might have to come in. So do you stay in shape even though you're not on the roster?
Well, I had bone chips in my elbow. I probably would have made that playoff roster, but they gave it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so I was just watching the games.
Are you part of the team at all, even though you're hurt, or how's that all work?
Yeah, you're still, I was still on the 25-man roster or the 40-man roster or whatever. You're just not on that 40. You're not on the playoff roster.
Sure.
So when the Yankees did go to the playoffs and eventually win the World Series, they give you like a share. Yep. You had so many days in the big leagues, so we're going to give you this amount of money. You still make your normal amount of money throughout the year, but when they win the World Series, they divide up a certain amount of money, and based on days, service time, stuff like that, that's how you get your cut.
And you got your playoff share.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Were you part of then the World Series parade?
No, but they did fly me up to New York, and I was part of that World Series alumni thing that they do, and we signed. It was a big signing, and all the former players were there.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So I haven't been to New Yankee. I was at Old Yankee Stadium back in like 1994, right before the strike in 94. I was at Old Yankee. But I've heard that New Yankee, there's like a wall of an autographed baseball of every guy that's ever put on the pinstripes. Mm-hmm. And I've got to imagine that you have a ball on that wall if it includes everybody that's ever played for the Yankees. Is that a real thing?
No, that's true. And I've never been to the new Yankee Stadium yet. I'd like to get back up there and check it out. But Steve Probst.
Oh, our boy.
Yes. Steve was up there, took his family up there, and he took pictures. And he took a picture of the signed baseball and looked right at, and it was cool because I still have it to this day. It's awesome. I've never really seen it up until that point.
That is so neat. Yeah, we talk a lot of times about, like in college sports, they have these great alumni programs, right? You have, if you played Notre Dame football, you're an alumni for life. If you played Duke basketball, you're an alumni for life, and they really take care of their alumni. North Carolina basketball is another one. And I feel like the one team in Major League Baseball that probably does the best job of that is the Yankees, right? Like you mentioned earlier, once you're a Yankee, you're a Yankee for life. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to be a Yankee for life? Like as you sit here today, I think you're about 47 years old. Yep. You're still a Yankee in the eyes of the Yankees, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They take care of you, if they're ever in town, since we live in the Midwest. If they come to Minnesota or Chicago or down in Kansas City, I think this year they're playing the Cardinals down in St. Louis. They'll leave me and my family, 4 or 5 tickets.
No kidding.
Yep. It'll be just waiting down there at the will call office. They just said, just get a hold of whoever, call the front office, let them know that you're interested in going to this game, and they'll leave you some tickets if you want to take you and your family to the ball games.
That's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So do you have a World Series ring then?
They said I was 23 days shy of getting.
Oh, brutal.
Yep, I had this meeting with Brian Cashman and Mark Newman. That wasn't one of my finest hours because I really wanted that ring. I would have traded any amount. I'd have gave them that the share money back to them if I'd have got some hardware to give to my son.
Oh, yeah.
I was long gone.
Right.
That'd have been cool. I would have loved to have that ring.
So the big question then, Darrell, is the Yankees are playing at the Field of Dreams this year. And it's my assumption that is going to be the most expensive ticket for a state of Iowa sporting event, maybe ever. So will you be able to get a ticket to that game?
I don't think so. I think those tickets, there's Yankee fans from across the world, and I think there's going to be Yankee fans coming from across the country to watch that game in Dyersville.
Yeah.
I think Kevin Costner is going to be there. It's going to be a huge event.
And there's only 8,000 tickets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get a bad crowd down at Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City gets 23,000 people, right? And so for only 8,000 for the first ever Major League game to take place in the state of Iowa between the Yankees and the White Sox, that's going to be a tough ticket.
Yeah, I think so too.
What do you think those will go for on the secondary market?
Oh man, I could see someone paying $5,000 for a ticket. I really could.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. First game in Iowa, and you got the Yankees, and you got old Shoeless Joe.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would love to go, and I would give a lot to go, but I just don't think it's going to be feasible. Like, I just don't think it's going to make sense. Even for me, even to have I don't even think I'll have the opportunity to put a number on something. I think they'll just be gone.
I think if you happen to go, they might be setting up some huge projector stuff in the parking lot, but I just think the environment, they're going to have so many cool things going on down there.
I want to figure out, how do I get on the grounds crew? Right? Can I be one of the guys that rakes the base paths between innings? Who's doing that? Oh, they don't have some stadium crew,
Yeah, I don't know. They're going to put together something.
I know. Cool. Well, Darrell, so after the 2000 year, right? That was your 1 year in the big leagues, but then you still played a couple more years of ball. I think you must have dealt with an injury because you didn't play in 01, but then you played again in 02. So was it the bone spurs that you were dealing with still for the next couple of years?
Well, I made the big league team coming out of spring training in 2001.
Okay.
I had a small partial tear underneath my armpit area. And so that kind of shut me down for the 2001 season. But I got big league service time.
Oh, nice.
Since I was, still on the 40-man roster, made the club coming out of spring training. And so, but yeah, it just, when you tear a shoulder, it's never the same. I wish I'd have had Tommy John. There's a lot of young players right now that come back after TJ, and they're throwing harder. But, I think, once you tear the shoulder, it's a different animal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you just were never able to get it back feeling right again.
Not really. I'd have days where I'd throw 93, 94, and then there'd be days I'd be throwing 85 to 86. BP fastballs. That's not going to get it done.
Right.
So,
who was the toughest hitter you ever faced?
Oh, shoot. My first major league strikeout was Jose Canseco.
No way.
Yeah. So, yeah, I faced Cal Ripken up in Baltimore. Oh, shoot. Juan Gonzalez out of Detroit.
Oh, man.
But those are big swingers. You want to face those guys because, they're just hacking.
Yeah, they'll swing and miss just as much as they connect. Well, not a lot more than they connect, but when they connect, it's going to hurt.
I hate facing those guys that foul off 10, and then bleed one over the third baseman's head. Just those guys are just, oh.
Did you ever have a guy that just owned you?
Oh, shoot. I don't know. No, I don't think so. You take a look at some of the numbers that I had coming up through the minor leagues. The one that sticks out is that year where it's like a 4-5 or something like that. But leading up to that, I think it was like 1-8, 2-1, 1-9. So I had some pretty good numbers. You take away that injury year and
yeah.
I wasn't a strikeout guy. I was a pitch to contact guy. I'd sink and slide you away to the right-handers. Every now and then I'd throw an occasional changeup to a left-hander to get them off the heater. But,
right.
I pitched to contact normally, and I threw a lot of strikes.
What was Jeter like in the clubhouse?
Oh, Jeet was cool. Yeah, he was cool as a fan. He'd treat you just like you were in the big leagues, 10 years. He didn't big league you. There's a
right.
Where guys would look down on you just because you're a rookie. But no, he was a genuine good dude.
At that time, the Yankees were huge. I mean, they're still huge, but like that was a dynasty. That era that you were playing for them, they were in the middle of a dynasty. When you go from city to city as a New York Yankee, are there fans in every hotel and autograph seekers and women and all that stuff that you see on the Kevin Costner movies?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. Like when guys they'll have aliases.
Did you have one?
No, I didn't need one. I didn't need one. Like, who's that guy?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, everything's like that. When you go on the road, I'd stick with the guys and my buddies. Like Nobby was Chuck Knobloch.
Yeah,
he was one of my guys. Bellinger.
Oh, Clay Bellinger.
Clay Bellinger, Cody's dad.
Yeah,
him and I were buddies. We'd all go bowling. Posada was one of the guys. Shane Spencer was one of the guys. But yeah, they took good care of me.
Was Clemens one of the guys?
Who, Roger?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rocket. Yeah, Rocket was awesome. I didn't back then. I was learning how to play golf, but I could talk a mean game. And so actually, he took me out 2 or 3 different times. In spring training, took me out during the year. But down in spring training, he got enough. He got tired of hearing my mouth. He goes, "You pick the best. You pick your best guy. I'll take one of the guys I hear from the team and meet us at this country club, blah blah." But little did he know that my good friend played for Florida State University.
Golf?
So, oh yeah, and so I brought him along, and all I had to do was make a putt here and there. But he was
that's great.
Yeah, he was striping it down the fairway all day long. Clemens was getting pissed.
Ever drink beers with Wells?
Oh yeah, many times.
Were you able to keep up?
Actually, I was in my early 20s, so I was right there with him. He was late 30s, I think, at the time or something like that. Yeah, so we had some fun. We had some stories.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's got to be fun. You turn the game on now, even though your career in the major leagues was relatively brief, but you turn the game on now, and there's still so many of like your ex-teammates or guys that you ran into that are still involved with the game. I mean, hell, Jeter's running the Marlins. You have David Cohn, who's one of the best color guys in the game. Roger Clemens is a legend. Like, a lot of these guys are still around the game, and you know them. You were part of that.
Oh yeah, yep. I'm still around the game, just not on their level. Kind of like yourself. You and I are both,
right.
pitching coaches for, Downey Catholic here in West Des Moines.
Right. And
I love doing that. If I can teach young players the right way to play the game, I'm not a guru of any sort just because I pitched in the major leagues. I just know how to relate to kids. And, if I can get just a little something extra out of them, I'm doing my job.
So talking about coaching kids, right? I mean, you see so often now that we have sports specialization, and you get on Twitter, there's a hitting guru. You run into 50 hitting gurus. Pitching's kind of the same way. There's, and a lot of it is, there's so much of it now. As a guy that has had plenty of experience and a lot of success, what are you trying to impart on kids at 15, 16, 17 years old?
Well, I'm trying to teach them the proper mechanics. If you don't have good mechanics early in life, you're going to have bad mechanics when you go away. So if you can kind of keep it simple, if they can repeat their mechanics with all 3 pitches, if they have 3, and not try to overthrow. And the main part of pitching really is to throw strikes. If you can throw 95 but you can't hit the broadside of a barn, you're not really helping me. I'd rather have a guy throwing 85 that can dial it in and, throw 7 innings under 90 pitches. That'd be awesome.
Do you have the whole Dowling team filling up tennis balls with pennies right now?
No, they don't do that. They, a lot of them, they'll do drive line. Some of them, it's different strokes for different folks,
right?
So, and all pitchers don't pitch alike, or we'd all be robots.
Exactly.
So I have my style; they have their style. So I just try and get them in, focus on the release point and keeping closed on the front side. And
that was my problem. Yeah. I'd always be flying open on the front side. If I was ever closed, man, I'd still be pitching. I'm kidding. So, Darrell, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions, all right? First question, then, is who's your all-time favorite teammate?
Oh, all-time favorite teammate. Oh, my goodness. I played with so many different guys. I loved Soriano, but I really couldn't understand him. He made me laugh. I'd probably have to say Shane Spencer, because Shane took me under his wing early in the minor leagues. He knew I was having a pretty good minor league career, and he goes, "Get your ass up here. We need you up here." And so when I did finally get to the big leagues, he let me stay with him for the first 3 months.
What was the story about Shane Spencer, too? Because he popped with the Yankees. Was it like 1 month or one series or something where he had like a ton of home runs, and they were calling him like the next, the next Ruth and stuff like that? I remember he had a flash in the pan for the Yankees where he was like going to be the next guy for a bit.
I think it was one September where he hit 10 home runs, and 4 of those home runs were grand slams.
Oh my gosh.
And so he went off. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
And that was awesome.
Yeah, he was a big part of those teams in that run. It seemed like they had a kind of a rotating left field spot, and him and another guy that had kind of like a crew cut. Can't remember who, and he wore his socks up.
Curtis.
Yeah, something Curtis.
Yeah, I know. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, they would always kind of platoon in left field.
Yep, they would.
Second question, and when you look back on your career, what's one memory that you have that reminds you of everything that you love about the game of baseball?
Oh, my goodness. I think getting called up to the big leagues, out of Durham, North Carolina, calling my dad. He was the first person I did talk to, and I'll never forget that moment. It was just brings tears to my eyes now thinking about it. But yeah, that was that's when it just really, really, really sunk in that I was going to the show.
We brought up Denny Barton earlier. I know he had a big influence on you. You brought up Jerry Ford. You brought up, the Indian Hills coaches, Matthews there as well. Was it your dad that introduced you to the game of baseball?
Oh, yeah. My dad worked with me ever since I was little. Him and my brother Jimmy were the two that really got me going. They'd work 10, 12 hours, and I'd come home from school and we were out in the yard playing catch, or throwing a bullpen or hitting fly balls or just doing something baseball related that I just kind of fell in love with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that still nags at you from your career?
I just wish I could have played a little longer and stayed a little healthier. That's the only gripe I have. But you know what? The 12 games or whatever it is that I pitched in, the 96 active days that I was there wearing the uniform was priceless. I wouldn't change that for the world.
How's your arm now?
I think it's not very good. I can't throw BP.
Can you toss it all? Can you play catch?
Yeah. I can definitely play catch if I drop it and throw sidearm. All the kids make fun of me. It's fine.
Yeah, do what I say, not what I do right now, right? What are you most proud of?
Oh, man, what am I most proud of now is I'd have to say my son. He's a junior at Dowling. Just lost his mom about 16 months ago.
I'm
so
sorry.
Him and I are buddies.
Yeah.
We do everything together. And so seeing him play the game, be the student that he's become, is, I couldn't ask for anything more.
That's cool. What's the best advice you've ever received, Darrell?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, man. That's a tough one because I've received advice from so many great players / coaches. But I'd have to say from my dad. My dad just said, never give up. You got a gift. Let it take you as far as it'll take you. And good things happen to good people.
I love that. So this time of year, it's spring training, and hopefully, baseball season will happen this season, right? But I think so many baseball guys, we're starting to get the itch right around this time, right? So when it hits March, what are you feeling? Even at 47 years old, what's your body? Do you still get the itch?
Oh my goodness, I can't wait. I can't wait to get on the field right now.
Yeah.
It's I can't wait to put on the uniform, get these guys going. They hate conditioning just like every other pitcher does. They don't like to run, but just doing that, being on the field, smelling the grass, dragging the field, it's just awesome. I just love it. I can't wait to get out there and start doing it all over again.
I love that. Yeah, me too. And that's why we're having you on. you know, as opening day approaches, we had to get some baseball guys in here. We got to talk shop. So, Darrell, thank you so much for coming on the Moonlight Graham Show. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.